Well, it's a special day, and I always I get moved when I think about the many of you who have served in our country. And there's something about being in this church with so many of you who have served. It's a thrill for me. And something I want to do. This is Veterans Day week, and I would like all of you who are veterans, not only in the military, but first responders, whether police or fire department or emergency medical people. I want all of you to stand right now that you would be called a veteran. Please stand so we could recognize you. Thank you for your service. Well, I've had a lot of people ask Diane and me, what did we do on our vacation? I mean, we've been back 3 weeks. Some of you are saying, oh, did you just get back? No, I've been back 3 weeks. But what did you do? Well, I want to tell you a little bit about a couple things. What did we do? Well, we went to sail on this boat, but I think we missed the boat. Now, maybe you don't recognize that, but in Williamston, Kentucky, they have this thing called the Ark Encounter. It's a full-size replica of Noah's Ark. I think it's 530 feet long. And inside is the most amazing exhibits. If you ever get a chance to be back, and it's not far from Cincinnati or Louisville, you got to go to this thing. It is astounding. A lot about creation. A lot about how, all the animals would have been on that ark. It's well worth it. So if you ever get back there, go to it. But we went on the ark. Now, we did some other things, though, that to me more profoundly hit me, and particularly as I'm thinking about Veterans Day. And while I was on my vacation, I was thinking about Veterans Day. We went and stayed in Concord for about 3 days before we went out to Lexington, out to Cape Cod. If you have ever been back in that part of the country, there is so much history. This is the Minuteman Memorial there in Concord, Mass. And one morning we went out there to it, and it was very impressive. They had a whole drum and fife corps there, all in the Revolutionary War outfits playing. It was really something amazing. And there's a bridge there. It's called the North Bridge. It's really been rebuilt. But this is where the battle took place there in Concord. Ralph Waldo Emerson came up with a hymn as a poem called the Concord Hymn. And in it's that famous line, the shot heard round the world. Now, the truth of the matter is that the first shots weren't fired there, although this was the real battle. We had over 400 Minutemen there. But the first shots were really at the Battle of Lexington Green, which is just a few miles away. And then it ended up being out there at Concord, April 19, 1775. And what that did is it made me think a lot about our veterans, not just the Revolutionary War, but all down through our country. And I said to myself, when I get back and we come to Veterans Day, I really want to take some time and think about what we have to be grateful about and for with these men and women who have been veterans in our country. This is another statue that's there in Lexington. It's another statue of the Minutemen. And what I want to do today is I want you to think with me about giving thanks for the sacrifice of heroes, because everyone who has served has been a hero. What do we thank God for? Well, we thank God for the sacrifice of their time. I don't know whether you think about it or not very much, but to each and every person who has served in the military or served as a first responder, they give of their time. Oftentimes time that they would rather be doing something else. Ecclesiastes addresses this. It says there is a time for everything and a season activity under heaven. To our men and women in uniform, past, present, and future, God bless you and thank you for your time. It goes on to say there's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. There are times when we want to get on with what we want to do, but there are times when we need to cease from that and defend our country. Ecclesiastes 3:8 says there's a time for war as well as a time for peace. And we're thankful for those veterans who have served. You know, it's not always necessarily in battle either that these veterans serve. I'll tell you a little story. This happened about 5 years ago. There's a little guy. His name was Cody Green. He's 12 years old in Indiana. Cody was diagnosed with leukemia at 22 months. But he loved the Marine Corps. His parents said he drew strength and courage from the Marine Corps as he bravely fought the battle of remission. He fought it for 3 different times. He lived to be 12 years old. And although he was cancer-free at the time, the chemotherapy had lowered his immune system so much that he developed a fungal infection that attacked his brain. It would ultimately take his life. Near the end, he struggled to fend off that infection. And when the Marines heard about it, they wanted to show how much they respected this little guy for his will to live and his strength and honor and courage. So they went to the hospital and they presented Cody with the Marine Navigator wings and named him an honorary member of the United States Marine Corps. But it gets better. One of those Marines, for him, it wasn't enough. So that last night on earth for Cody Green, this Marine stood guard at Cody's door all night long for 8 hours. Those are the kind of men that we honor. Those are the kind of men and women who are our veterans, who give of their time to serve our country. We also give thanks for the sacrifice of their families. You know, when you serve in the military, you give up a lot. And some of it has to do with your family. Ecclesiastes goes on to say there's a time to scatter stones, a time to gather stones, which I think refers to building your home. And there's a time to embrace, but there's also a time to refrain from embracing. You can imagine what it is for these men to leave their families behind, what it is for their families to say goodbye to dad or mom. I love this one. I waited my entire life to meet you. Hi, welcome home, Daddy. But what a sacrifice to not be able to be there when your child is born. There's a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance. Men who serve in the military, they sacrifice a lot in their family. Happens to be one of those things they sacrifice. We owe the young men and women in the armed services and their families our deepest respect, Senator Bill Frist reminds us. We all remember 9/11. Among the many heroes that are written about in a book called Among the Heroes, the story of Flight 93, was Jack Grancolis. Jack was on that flight. His wife, Lauren, tells the story later that they were the ultimate patriots. They did the most democratic thing that any group of people could possibly do. They gathered information, they voted to do something. And they knew there was only about a 98 to 99% chance that they wouldn't make it. There was about a 98% chance that they wouldn't make it. But they said to themselves, let's save others. And you know the story. They overwhelmed the guys in the cockpit, but in the process, the plane went down. That plane was headed for Washington, D.C., headed for the Capitol, headed for the White House. But that's what Americans do. And they were veterans too. But we give thanks for the sacrifice of their dreams. You know, people serve in the military, it means putting a lot of things on hold. Ecclesiastes says there's a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to tear down, and a time to build up. There's a time to get on with life, time to do the things that we want to do, to build the careers, build the home, build the families. But those things go on hold. Time to search and a time to quit searching for what you want to do because you need to do what needs to be done. What's a veteran? It's someone who at one point in their life wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount of up to and including their life. And we give thanks for those kinds of people. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. So we thank you for your service, your sacrifice, all you have served. We also give thanks for the sacrifice of their safety. Obviously, those who serve in the military serve at risk. They serve at peril. They serve at the risk of their safety, even their lives. It's a time to be born and a time to die. We're reminded of that. It's a time to tear and a time to mend. Some come back not whole. They gave up a lot. It's a time to cry and a time to grieve. For some, they gave everything. And for loved ones, they lost everything. It's also a time to be silent and a time to speak. And I think when we face times where things have happened in our nation, we need to speak a word for God. I love this story. It's about a young Marine. He was home between deployments. He'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan. So he took some time to take a college course, improve himself. Just happened that one of the courses he took, he had a professor who was an avowed atheist and a member of the ACLU. So one day the professor shocked the class by looking up at the ceiling and shouting, "God, if you are real, then I challenge you to come down and knock me off this platform. I demand that you do it in the next 15 minutes. Nobody said anything. We all sat there kind of quiet. And he waited. 10 minutes went by. And finally he shouts again, "I am here, God. I'm still waiting." He got down to the last couple of minutes, and all at once this young Marine got up out of his seat, went to the platform, and cold-cocked the professor. Knocked him out cold. Then he went back and sat down in his seat very quietly and waited. You can imagine everybody else in the classroom was like. Finally, the professor comes to and gets up and noticeably shaken. He looks at this Marine and he says, "What is the matter with you? Why did you hit me?" This young guy calmly replies, "Well, God was too busy today protecting American soldiers who are protecting their right to say stupid things and protecting people like you and their right to say stupid things and act like a jerk. So he sent me." Oh, I love that. I love that. And we give thanks to God for those who have protected our rights to speak and our rights to believe. And we thank God for those first responders who will never return. We'll never forget 9/11. And those firemen and policemen who, trying to serve others, gave every ounce of their being, the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you for your service, first responders. Alexander Hamilton, a very long time ago, our first Secretary of the Treasury, who incidentally founded the Coast Guard, But I like his statement. True heroism is very undramatic. It's not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but it is the urge to serve others at whatever the cost. And today, we thank you, all of you who are veterans, for your enduring friendship. And you will always be our friends, people we hold and respect and esteem. Why? Because the scriptures tell us, greater love has no man but this, that he lay down his life for his friends. You've done that for us. And we thank you for that enduring friendship. This is a special day. You have the opportunity, when you meet somebody as a veteran, you tell them thank you for your service. I got to tell you one thing this is totally, I hadn't prepared this, but something I'm really grateful for. I'm a Vietnam vet. And I will never forget coming back to that time. People didn't thank you for your service. Many spit on you, turned their back on you, criticized you. I'm so grateful to be living in a day in this country when I go to the store. Yesterday, Diane and I went to Target. And I don't know, I guess I had my Coast Guard Academy hat on. And so she saw that. And she said, thank you for your service. And by the way, we'll give you 10% off today. So I said, thank you for your service. I'm so grateful to be living at a time where our country understands the need for those who serve and honors them. And today, as we gather here, that's exactly what we do. Would you stand with me